Okay, welcome. This is our weekly lunch with Don kind of thing, or water or granola bar or whatever you have, the fruit snack with Don. Hopefully you can take a few minutes off, and we're going to answer some questions that you have. If you have questions, Kendall, how do they?
Just type it in on Facebook. You'll see there. Yep, it looks like we got a few people jumping on now. So just type it in. Type it on the comment screen. Yeah.
And until we get any questions that we're just going to have Les. Les is our customer service manager, answers questions most of the day, and some of the questions that have come up this week. So let's hit those until we get some questions from our viewers right now, hot live. So, Les, what kind of questions we had this week?
Don, this week we've been getting a lot of questions about resident agents or registered agents and what people should do. Everyone wants to know, how's the best way to find a registered agent? What should they ask? What should they look for?
Okay. Well, first of all, let's talk about what a resident agent is. In different states, they're called different things. Some of them are called resident agent. Some states call them a registered agent. Others will call it an agent for service and process. But technically, if I wanted to set up a business in another state, let's say I wanted to go to New York. Well, I don't live in New York. I did, but not anymore. If I wanted to set up a business, they don't want to come track me down in Utah. If there's ever a lawsuit or anything, they're not going to send a marshal or a sheriff or somebody to come out and serve me papers in Utah. They want somebody local to New York State, which generally means that the person, because they're going to sign a summons or some type of legal document, you need somebody who can sign. So this is usually a person, not a corporation. That's number one requirement. Number two is they have to live there most of the time. And number three is that they have to have a physical address, not a post office box. That's what we call a resident agent. And how you find one, oh my gosh, go do a Google search and resident agent, Nevada, or whatever state you're looking for. Last time I checked, there were 26,000 resident agents in Nevada. They're all over the place. Your brother-in-law, your sister, anybody that lives there that meets those requirements can generally be a resident agent. They don't have to be a professional person, but it has to be somebody that you trust. Let's say I've got a rental property in Indianapolis. I don't want to have my renter be my resident agent, even though they live there. But if the lawsuit comes from them, they may very well bury that. I never get it, therefore I default on the lawsuit. And so you got to be careful. You have to have somebody that you can trust that's going to get you the piece of paper. It's really kind of a do-nothing job. They sit at their office, they run their whatever their business is, but their job is to get you that piece of paper in a timely manner. That's their. Now, you could pay them to do other things. You could pay them to collect the mail and forward it to you. Besides that, they could answer the phone. Corporate offices, they could, and then forward you that. They could do all your filings for you. They could set up a bank account for you. They could do your minutes and meetings and resolutions. They could have an open office. Anytime you want to come there, you have a business meeting. These are other services that I'm showing nexus. I'm showing presence in the state. I'm really doing business. I have a home office there. You can have a virtual office there. But if you have to go there to Nevada and have your business meetings, all of these things come with a little extra price. But generally across the board, you're looking for somebody to be a resident agent to sign that piece of paper.
They'll give you a local presence.
Right.
They'll be there in case you need to be served by a processor.
Right.
And then any other services, the price of them depends on what services they offer. Is that
That's
right?
exactly right.
Okay.
And so generally, I think you're starting I think $70 is the cheapest I've ever seen. Usually $150 a year to be a resident agent. I probably serve as resident agent for 25 or 30 resident agent or different LLCs, corporations, who are friends and family, and I don't know that I've ever charged them anything other than their filing fees. But I don't do that for students. Sometimes when you're running a high risk business, you really want a professional person rather than your brother-in-law that may or not be on vacation at the time the lawsuit comes. It's probably there's a time to upgrade, there's a time to be cheap, but when there's a lot on the line, you don't want your brother-in-law or your sister to do it.
You need somebody there that's generally there during regular business hours.
Right, and how to find somebody, you need somebody that's trusted, will get you the information in a timely manner, and not let balls drop. And so generally, if you're doing, can you be your own resident agent? Well, only if you live in that state.
Should you be your own resident agent?
That's a really good, that's a whole nother question.
Quickly, back to that, as far as the address, you can't use a post office box because you have to have somebody that is there.
Correct.
As the agent.
Right.
Okay.
Okay, so should you be that's a whole different question. And again, it depends on what it is you're doing. I've seen students be their own resident agent to save money, and that might be okay unless you're not really good at paperwork. And then, the filing, the notice of filing comes. I've got a couple here on my desk. And you kind of forget that the resident agent, if they're good and you're paying them maybe a little bit extra, they'll make sure that your filing fees are being paid on time. That, there's a lot that they can do for you. They can do your minutes and meetings. They can do your resolutions. Hey, we just had a meeting. Can you draft a resolution to cover this? Yes, they can do that. There's a lot that they can do, and sometimes those services are very, very good. Now, if you're really, really good at paperwork, and that's fine, but if you're not, and if you're going to let balls drop, then pay somebody to do it. If you're going to have a corporation or an LLC, you have to play the game and play it right, and everyone has different strengths and weaknesses. If this is not your strength, this paperwork and little details, then hire somebody to do it. Is that fair?
That's fair. So it would make more sense to pay a little bit of extra money if you're busy and you don't know those things, to have somebody do that for you.
I've got a lot of different businesses, and it's really imperative that I separate this. Now, could it be your secretary? Yes, again. But there's also times when I don't want to be my own resident agent because I want a little anonymity. I want a little separation. And so I don't want everything coming to my home address. There's probably times when I want to separate the business from maybe my business address, but I do want anonymity. So you could pay your attorney, your accountant to be your resident agent. You could pay somebody in your state. Out of state, you've got to look for somebody that's licensed out of state. Do they have to be licensed to be a resident agent? Some states do require that they have a certification there. So,
Okay, so does each LLC you form need to have its own tax ID?
Ooh, that's such a good question. So Les, let me ask you. If you had twins, do each one of them need their own social security number, but they were born on the same day and they got the same parents? Couldn't you just group them both together, and do they need their own social security? Yeah, they're identical twins, so...
Yes, they do need their own.
Of course they do. So what you're saying to the courts is this is a separate legal entity. If this gets in trouble, it doesn't affect anything else that I'm doing. It doesn't domino my... Yeah, absolutely. You're saying this is a separate legal entity. So almost every LLC that you do is going to need its own bank account. It's going to need its own tax ID number. Whether it files a tax return or not might be irrelevant. Some LLCs might be disregarded for tax purposes. Sometimes a trust will be disregarded. But almost everyone, we like them to have their own tax ID number and its own its own bank account, with very few exceptions. I don't know that I need to get into all the exceptions, but there's exceptions to everything. But generally, to say this is a standalone entity, separate bank account, separate EIN number.
So it's just like it's a person. That's its social security number.
Yeah, and don't get confused by it's an employee identification number. Some businesses don't have employees, but it's a social security number for a business.
For the business.
Yep, that's it.
Okay. So, how about transferring properties? There's the question of, should I use a warranty deed? Should I use a quitclaim deed? When do I determine which?
Okay. So let's define those. What a warranty deed is, you're generally going to a real estate attorney, or you're going to a title company. They're doing a search on the title of this and to see if there's any liens or encumbrances against that property. And they're warranting that this is, you've got clear title, or that these are all the liens that are attached. There's nothing hidden. So when I'm buying a piece of property, I always want a warranty deed. Yes, okay, I bought the property for $100,000, but are there any liens, any IRS liens, or somebody else put a lien against it? I want clear title to this. Therefore, I'm looking for a warranty deed. Sometimes all I'm doing is I'm transferring a property into an LLC that I own. Or maybe it's free and clear, and I've owned it for 20 years. If there were a lien, I would think that I would know about it. As all I'm doing is I'm quitting. I'm abandoning all my claims to the property, and I'm assigning that to my LLC or to my trust or something. Now, sometimes we think that, well, since I own the property now, and I'm simply conveying it into an LLC that I own, sometimes the quitclaim deed is, well, it's certainly easier. I don't have to pay anybody to do it. I get a quitclaim form and I fill it out and file that with the county registrar, the registrar, or what do we call it? Oh, the county recorder. Or the registrar of deeds. That's usually it. And a quitclaim deed is certainly easier, but a warranty deed will cost you a few bucks. Usually $300 or $400 has been my experience. If there's a mortgage on the property, the mortgage company may want to see that the warranty deed rather than the quitclaim deed.
Okay.
But if it's just me and I'm transferring this to a child, the quitclaim deed's easy. I don't need an attorney. I just fill out the quitclaim deed. I'm abandoning my claims, and I'm basically giving it to my trust. If there's a mortgage, though, they may want the warranty deed.
So let's say somebody owns the property right now, it's free and clear,
Yep.
no encumbrances on it at all.
Yep.
They have had the property in their own name. Now they decide, after learning about asset protection and how they can get sued, they decide they want to protect themselves. So they decide to create an LLC for it.
Okay.
Would the simplest way to transfer that property then, since it's paid off, be to put it to use a quitclaim deed to put it into the LLC?
Sure, it's paid off. Again, if there were liens or encumbrances, you would probably know about them. Not always, but yeah. So I own the property. It's free and clear. I want to convey that to an LLC that I own. A quitclaim deed would be a very appropriate tool.
Okay, so now let's take people that own properties in different states. They want to create an LLC for each one of those properties. Now let's just say, an example I got. We've got somebody in Georgia that owns a property. Then they're buying a property in Illinois, and they're buying another property in Arizona. Each one should be in its own state-specific entity, correct? State-specific LLC. And each one needs to have a registered agent or resident agent in the state of residence.
That's a good question, and we get this a lot. A lot of people think that they can have a Nevada or Wyoming entity and it can own all of their properties, and it is true that they can. The problem will come to jurisdiction and standing. Let's say, again, my Indiana rental property. If I were to hold that in a Wyoming holding company, and now someday I want to get sued. I don't know.
You want to get sued?
I don't want to get sued. I'm sorry, I get sued. Or if I want to file an action against somebody, I want to evict a tenant. I do not have standing in Indiana courts. Or if I want to defend myself, somebody sues me, or I want to enforce a contract. Picture you showing up after you've been sued, and you show up in the state, and there you are, and you're sitting there, and you're ready to defend yourself. There's a prosecution table, and there's a defense table, and there's a judge, and the prosecutor says, Judge, the defendant didn't show up today. We're calling for a immediate summary judgment, and you're going, here I am. No, judge doesn't have to recognize you. You don't have standing in that state. Ooh, that's a problem. So we always like you to have, so if you're going to own property in whatever state you're in, Alaska to Alabama to Arizona, we'd like the entity to be filed there, again, so that you have standing in that state, legal standing. Now that entity could be held by something else, could be held by your trust, could be held by Wyoming holding companies, could be held by a lot of things, but the initial ownership, we'd like it to be registered in that state. It's paying taxes in that state. It's paying property taxes, business taxes, whether it's licensed to do business. You therefore have standing, and you can defend yourself and enforce contracts, evict tenants, that kind of stuff.
And the Wyoming holding company could still be the single member for each one if they're a single member LLC?
Yeah, so it could have, we hold it in Indiana, in an Indiana LLC, which is owned by whatever you want it to be. Yeah,
Okay.
Something stronger.
What about depreciation recapture? So if you depreciated the property, if you transfer from your name to an entity, is there depreciation issues there?
It could be, but generally we want everything to pass through, depreciation deductions to pass through to you. And so we either use disregarded entities like single member LLCs, or we use pass-through entities like partnerships. So it could be an LLC taxed as a partnership or an LLC taxed as an S corp, so that depreciation deduction continues to pass through you. And let's say you're 5 years into a depreciation schedule, and now we convey the property into an LLC. No, you don't mess up your depreciation schedule. You start next year on year 6, and you just keep going. If you've got passive losses, those come to you because, again, we're using pass-through or disregarded entities. Okay? Any other questions from?
That's great.
Do you run into a transfer tax situation?
Oh, sometimes you will, because some states will apply a real estate transfer fee. Washington, if you transfer a property, it has one. Florida has one. They call it a stamp tax, but it's a real estate transfer fee. Pennsylvania has a whopping one. So different states will have real estate transfer fees, and some of them they're exempt. You're exempt if you're moving a property out of your name into a trust. Sometimes, or into an LLC or into a limited partnership, or you're conveying the property out of a corporation into whatever you're doing. So sometimes there are real estate transfer fees, and I would contact a local professional, do a little Google search, or call customer service here, and we can help you through some of those. Sometimes, like Pennsylvania, there's not a lot of ways around their Pennsylvania laws. With Florida, we can use a land trust and avoid the real estate transfer fee almost every time. So there's things that we can do in some states, but every state is a little different. Most states do not have a real estate transfer fee.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, good. Now, another situation, I've got a student that's writing a book.
Okay.
He lives in New York.
Okay.
He wants the book to be, or the book or the copyright for the book to be owned by a Wyoming LLC, and it will be published by a publisher in New York.
Okay.
Does he have to file as a foreign entity in New York? And tell me, is the best place to put that copyright in the Wyoming LLC, and he can be a ghostwriter?
Good question.
Or hire a ghostwriter.
Okay, so he can. When we're dealing with intellectual property, it's a whole new gamut, and most people underestimate the value of their intellectual property. Let me show you what we do. Here's the book that we've written, and this could be white labeled in lots of different names, but we've called it the Asset Protection Handbook, and it's currently being marketed by Protect Wealth Academy. But Protect Wealth doesn't own the copyright. If you look at any page on there, it'll say copyright by APG Publishing, which is a separate company. But it's marketed through Protect Wealth Academy. So what we do is we take the I don't care where the marketing company is. If he's got a publishing company in New York, we're assuming that they have business licenses and they're established to do business and publish books in New York. So he doesn't have to be licensed. He's not doing business in New York. He's simply writing books in Wyoming or wherever he's at. His publishing company or whoever owns not his publishing company, but whoever owns his copyright could be Wyoming, because he's not doing business in any state.
You're just hiring them, right?
He's hiring somebody to publish the book. And so the publishing company is publishing lots of books for lots of different people. They're licensed to do business in New York, whatever state they are. You can own the copyright in Wyoming. You're not doing business in any state. You could own the copyright in your own little state. Could it be in an LLC or a limited partnership? We do like limited partnerships for intellectual property. That's a personal preference for us. Limited partnerships have been around a lot longer, a lot more court experience, a lot more experience in holding intellectual property, I think, than LLCs have traditionally. But that's kind of a preference. It could be an LLC or a limited partnership that we own copyrights and trademarks in. Kendall, you've got a question.
Which professional to be contacted for international land owned by a grandfather? So to be transferred before death or after death, probate lawyer, estate lawyer, international tax lawyer for capital gains. Which one? Tricky.
We're not. There's so many different countries and so many different laws, and whether it's Spain or Portugal or Brazil or wherever you're doing it. So, if they're transferring their ownership to you, that you're really looking for an international business attorney to help you with that transfer. We can help you protect it, your interest once you have it, but getting it here, that's not what we do. That's not our specialty. So I'm sorry, I'm not trying to be evasive. That's just not what we do. So we don't do asset protection internationally or estate planning internationally. Once you have it, then we can teach you how to protect it.
Okay. Well, that's the last question I have for today. What events are coming up that the students can take advantage of?
Oh, we're 4.5 weeks away from our 3-day Asset Protection Summit. If you haven't registered for that, go to our website, protectwealth.com, and watch the little preview video and watch some of the videos that we've had. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel. There's hundreds of hours of videos on there. Hundreds of hours, I don't know, at least 100 hours. I don't know how many hours, but lots. There's some great videos on there. There's some great webinars. In fact, there'll be a webinar next Tuesday night. Mike Koval will be back. He's on our stage usually every 3 or 4 months. And there's a lot of things that are going on in the stock market. We wanted to bring him back and say, look, here with the new administration in place, how's that affected the market and where are we gonna go from here? And so Mike Koval will be here next Tuesday night, that'll be March 23rd. So look forward to that. But also, if you haven't attended a summit or you haven't attended a summit in a while, go to protectwealth.com and sign up for that. This is where we're bringing the best of the best in income tax structuring and asset protection, in estate planning, some really good wealth creation ideas, and we'd love to have you. Les, any other questions that we're getting that we
Not
need
at
to
the
address?
moment. I'm thinking that the next lunch with Don, we'd like to talk some more about taxes. And so if anybody has any questions that they would like to have answered, please contact me at the hotline at 800-276-1430, or send us an email. Let us know what your questions are so that we can address them. We appreciate your time. Don, always appreciate your time and the effort and the understanding, as I've said before. You're better than the Encyclopedia Britannica, and we love it. Thanks.
We have a lot of fun. Thank you, everyone.
May 17th, taxes. They just got that notice this morning from the IRS.
Oh, that's a big, yeah. Our taxes got pushed back from April 15th to May 17th. So, woohoo, you have an extra month to prepare your taxes, file them if you haven't had a chance to do it. So, all right, thanks. Have a great week. Appreciate you being on.